Without further ado, I want to present for Nicol.
Oh, thank you so much. It's wonderful to see all these well-kent faces. As we say in Scotland, that's well-known faces. And it's lovely to be here. And I'm delighted to see so many people from different cultures because I just love cultural diversity. I always seek out places where I can go and find people who are singing, playing music, dancing from different cultures. And one of my favorite places is right over by the Meyerson Symphony Hall, and it's Artist Square. And it just so happens that most of the events there are free. And that's pretty important to a Scotsman. But that's not the only reason I go there, because they have a veritable plethora of international events there all the time. They have an Asian festival, and you can hear and see people perform from Laos, from Thailand, from Vietnam, from the Philippines, and then you can have they'll have the Asian festival, the Indian festival, then there's the Chinese festival, there's a Moroccan festival, and then you can go north of Dallas, and you can see the Greek festival, the Greek Orthodox Church. And of course, there's the Irish Festival. And we can't forget every year, at the beginning of June, there's the Texas Scottish Festival. Any of you know that? Over in Arlington. And so, you see, Dallas really has an amazing diversity of population from all over the world. And I've only mentioned a few, there's tons more. And for anybody interested in hearing or seeing any more of these different cultures, the different events, there's a lady in Dallas called Anne-Marie Weiss that's put together what I'd say a treasure trove of for Dallas, because it's a website called dallasinternational.com, and you can find just about any international event that's happening in Dallas on her website. And there's actually an international festival happening, I think it's July 16th and 17th, but you can check with her. It is, I'm getting a nod here, and that over 2 days, that's just all these cultures that are in Dallas will be at this event. Awesome. And so when I meet people from different cultures, I always stress, I think, how important it is to really keep alive your culture. Because a lot of people come to America and assimilate, become Americans, and forget about it. But I think it's really important to keep alive the traditions and the cultures and your heritage, because that's where you came from. Because I believe that it really enhances and enriches America, all the different cultures. And the only thing is, up until recently, I've not been practicing what I preach. You see? Because it's only when I came over here, believe it or not, that I've been wearing this Scottish outfit. But I have one person to thank for that. And unfortunately, she's not here tonight. Her name is Grenda. And she's out clowning tonight, you see, because she's actually a clown. Her name is Poppins the Clown. And Grenda is totally responsible for me being here tonight, because way back in January, we were recording. I have a recording studio, and I was putting together some music for Grenda's puppet show. And I just happened to play her something that I'd recorded, some poetry. And she says, "Gordy," she calls me Gordy, "Gordy, you need to get yourself on a kilt and get out there and do poetry readings." So I'm going, "Oh no, I don't want to do that." But she was really adamant, so I just pretended. Okay, I'll go along with that, because there's no way I'm going to do that. But I was afraid. And she said, right away, she says, let's find a kilt. So I mean, 8 o'clock on a Friday night in Dallas, where do you find a kilt, you know? Well, we're in the 21st century, and the internet's a place to go. I got this at eBay. I'm serious. But I forgot to mention, the very first coincidence, and I don't believe in coincidences, but the first coincidence, in retrospect, we hatched this whole plot on my birthday. That's not coincidence number one. Coincidence number two, this came from Edinburgh. It was made in Edinburgh. The company is still there today. They're called Kinloch Anderson. And it was made in 1936, almost 70 years ago. pretty decent. And I got it on the eBay. I was the only bidder. That wasn't a bit. Good for a Scotsman, see? Love it. And on the back of the kilt, there's a little tag that says Dr. Blair, 1936, and it has this number. And I called that, and it's his girlfriend. Just kidding. Anyway. So that's how I come to get this kilt, this outfit. And the other kind of coincidence number 3, I almost forgot, is that the guy, I got it from Plymouth. It was Plymouth in England was where the guy was, and he sent it surface mail to Dallas. Now, for those of you who don't know, surface mail is when you can't afford to send it air mail, because it takes, this thing costs $45 to send surface mail. And if you send it surface mail, it takes between 5 and 6 weeks. I know, because I send my Christmas presents to Scotland. It costs a fortune if you send, it costs more than the present to mail it if you send it air mail. So it sent it on the 16th of January, so I expected, oh, it'd probably get here about June or something, you know. But it arrived on the 25th of January, which is 9 days later. And the 25th of January is coincidence number 3, because that's Robert Burns' birthday. So I'm going, oh no, this is meant to be. Because it's meant to be, I've got to do this, I've really got to do it. I was scared to death, I'm just afraid. So it was his birthday. So I'd like to just tell you a little bit about Robert Burns, for those who haven't heard of him. He's Scotland's probably most beloved and immortal poet. Immortal because he's dead. But he was born in 1759 and died in 1796. So he was only 37 years old, and he has written volumes. I've got a book at home. I was going to bring it because it's a Scotsman's dream. It's leather bound, and I got it at Borders for $4.95. 550 pages of all his verses. So he was pretty busy, and his father was a farmer, so he ploughed the fields of his father's farm. And his poetry has been translated into just about every language in the world, and it's studied by a lot of people. So he's quite renowned as a poet. Let me check my notes here. There's maybe some, oh yeah, one more thing. Every year on his birthday, it's celebrated throughout the world. Every major city in the world has what they call a Burns Supper. And that's to celebrate Robert Burns' birthday by serving, among other things, haggis, which you don't want to know about. They have pipers playing, well, usually just the one, because they can't afford more than one. And piper playing, and then they'll have people dancing, singing, reading poetry, and usually drinking a lot of whiskey. That's the main part they go. But for people that might be interested in Scottish culture, that's a great place to go. And I have them here in Dallas, Texas. Even in Tyler, Texas. Can you believe that? Tyler, Texas. So they have one, I think it's at the Harwood Country Club. And if you wanted a real taste of Scottish culture, that's a good place to go, because there'll be lots of guys wearing kilts like me. And there's a lot of good fun, it really is. And a good place to go. I think that's all I've got now. Yeah. So I'm sure a few of you have heard the phrase, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. But most of you maybe don't know where it came from. Well, Robert Burns, like I say, was a farmer's son, and he ploughed the fields, and he was ploughing one day, and he just totally destroyed this little mouse's nest. And now Robert Burns is known for writing a lot of love poems, and I do believe he had lots of affairs, and he was probably a bit of a rascal. But this poem, I think, To a Mouse, is his most beautiful, really, for me. And it's really profound and insightful, because here's this guy's destroyed a little mouse's nest, and he writes this poem to apologize. So it's just really, I think, it's really a beautiful poem. And there are quite a few Scottish words in this poem, and I've got a translation here for anybody who might want to see what the words in English are. It's called To a Mouse. We sleeket, cowrin, timorous beastie. Oh, what a panic's in thy breastie. Thou needna start a war so hastily, with bicker and brattle. I would be loath to run and chase thee, with murder and pattle. I'm truly sorry, man's dominion has broken nature's social union, and justifies that ill opinion which makes thee startle. And me, thy poor earth-born companion and fellow mortal. I doubt na whiles but thou may thieve. What then, poor beastie, thou maun live. A daemon icker in a thraves, a smart a quest. I'll get a blessing with a lave and ne'er miss it. Thy wee bit hussy too in ruin. Its silly was the winds are strewing, and Nathan now to a big new in a foggage green, and bleak December winds ensuing, baith snell and keen. Thou saw the fields laid bare and waste, and weary winter coming fast, and cosy here beneath a blast thou thought to dwell, till crash the crow coulter passed out through thy cell. That wee bit heap of leaves and stibble has cost thee mony a weary nibble, and now thou's turned out for all thy trouble. But who's are hauled to thaw the winter's sleety dribble, and Cranbrook called? But Moosey, thou art no thy lane, in proving foresight may be vain. The best laid schemes of mice and men gang after gley, and lay us now but grief and pain or promised joy. Still, thou art blessed compared with me. The present only toucheth thee, but och, I backward cast my ee on prospects drear, and forward, though I canna see, I guess and fear. I'm sure you didn't understand a word of that, but it sounds good. Probably Robert Burns' most well-known poem is "My Love Is Like a Red, Red Rose," I think. And I got a call one day to go over to record a high school choir over in Haltom City. Don't know if you know where that's, over by Bedford and Euless. And I drive over there, and I've never heard a Texas high school choir before, so I don't know what to expect. But they were absolutely astounding. They were just incredible. They sung so well. I was really impressed. And then the icing on the cake was they sang "My Love Is Like a Red, Red Rose." And it was absolutely beautiful. It just really touched me. My love is like a red, red rose. Oh, my love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. As fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I. And I will love thee still, my dear, till all the seas gang dry. Till all the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun. And I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run. And fare thee well, my only love, and fare thee well a while. For I will come again, my love, though it were 10,000 miles. This next poem I learned when I was just a wee laddie back in primary school. I can't remember how far back. But for this particular poem, there's a few words I need to translate, just 3. One is skelf, and that is a little splinter that you might get in your finger. And the other one is greet. Now over here, greet means to welcome. But in Scotland, if your children are crying, the bairns are greeting, because the greet is to cry, you see. And the other word is letting on. That's 2 words, okay. Hyphen, letting on. And that means to pretend. But for this poem, I need a volunteer. Well, it's actually an implant, and he's coming up here right now. This is Jerry Houston, famous voiceover artist. Oh, you got...
I've been having a little problem.
You put your finger.
Yeah. You see, anything you can do, anything at all.
Your pinky.
Yeah.
Dearie me. Just you hold it that way till I get my specs and see. Oh my. And so it is. And there's the scalp. Now the new greeting in there. See that? I've gotten it to it. I'm sure that was nice there. Your finger said enough. You rogue. You're only letting on. He just wants his round up the same as Jerry's. And I'd just like to say that Jerry is responsible for me having a studio, my recording studio. Jerry is the kindest guy. Growing up in Scotland, when I was young, we didn't have a car. My parents never owned a car. And back then, I'm telling you, I only knew one family that we knew that had a car. Nobody had a car. So you get the bus everywhere. Or you walked. I would walk to save the bus fare. I'm serious. So I had some extra cash in my pocket. But my brother and I would get the bus. We'd get on the bus. We'd run upstairs. We'd run in the front seat, and we'd get in the front seat so we could get the big panoramic view upstairs. And we had really great times going to visit the relatives. And on the way on the bus, we'd be spotting cars. You see, back then we didn't have video games, nothing like that. So we'd, George, look, there goes a Hellman Imp. And he'd go, oh my God, there's a Mini Cooper over here, look. And we'd count up the cars and we'd have a score at the end. So, our journey would just go fly by and we'd be at the aunties and uncles before we knew it, And we always had a good time on the bus. And favourite auntie, well, in the evening, after we got through with the aunties and the uncles and the cousins, if you're lucky, the uncle would put his hand in his pocket and bring out a shiny shilling, and that'd be great. And if you're really lucky, bring out 2 bob, 2 shillings, And if things were really going well on the horses that week, you'd maybe get half a crown, 2 and 6pence. What's that? That's a half crown. What's that?
It's a half crown.
Oh, I didn't even see it. He's got a half crown watch. Jeez. It's worth about 30 cents back then. But I didn't have my glasses on it. These were just pretend glasses. But better than money, at one time we'd go to our Auntie Nan and Uncle Peter, and it was always the best time there, because first of all, my Aunt Nan she baked like a bandit. And I mean, you'd go there and the table would just be groaning with food. And my favourite thing was this kind of cherry and coconut crumble with like this real thick chocolate base, and it was, scrumptious. But the only problem is you had to eat all the other stuff too. Whether you liked it or not, you better eat that, you're not going home. But after that, my Uncle Peter he'd get the cards out, and he'd do these tricks with the cards, these magic tricks. And he'd take coins out of our ear and do all this stuff, and we'd just be sitting there, thinking he's something supernatural, because it was just real fun. We just had the best time. So they went to Australia. A lot of people from Scotland went to Australia back then. I don't know what the attraction was, but anyway, cheap. But they went to Australia, and so we never saw them for a long time. And they came back on his 70th birthday. Now my sister put on this big party for him, but we didn't tell him. We did a This Is Your Life. And I think you had that program over here, is that right? This is it, right. Well, over there they had this Irish guy named Eamon Andrews, remember? Eamon Andrews. And so I was Eamon Andrews. I had the book, the microphone and everything. And my Uncle Peter came up ostensibly for an afternoon tea or something to my sister's house. And she had 50 people hidden in the living room. So he opens the door and, surprise! I think he just about had a heart attack, Anyway, they took him outside, put him on. My sister's got a beautiful house, beautiful lawn. And he sat down there, and we invited all the special guests up to say a word about Uncle Peter, and he was in tears. He was really moved. And my little party piece for that was I wrote a little song. I'm going to read it as a poem, but it was a song, and it's called The Magic of Uncle Peter. And we lived, in Scotland you live in a street, over here you live on a street. I don't know what the difference is, but it felt the same, it feels the same. But we lived in Paisley Drive, so that's the first line. So it's, we've just come up from Paisley Drive, and we can remember when we were 5. Coins and cards would go up in the sky with the magic of Uncle Peter. Tiddy-dum, tiddy-dum, tiddy-doo-dum-day. See, that was the song part. Right? And Nan's own cakes and chocolate treats were such a joy and delight to eat. But nothing held us in our seats like the magic of Uncle Peter. Tiddy-dum, tiddy-dum, tiddy-dum. Or to Australia he did go, because he likes the sun, but no the snow. Now just watch the koalas go, 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 with the magic of Uncle Peter. Now he's 70, but didn't fret, because there's mony a year left in him yet. So let's hear you shout your loudest yet, for the magic of Uncle Peter. There's a river in Scotland called the River Doon. It's a really beautiful setting for anything you might want to do. And I'm sure Robert Burns would take all his likely young female companions along its flowery banks and romanced them there. And he wrote this poem called Ye Banks and Braes o' Bonnie Doon back in 1791. Ye flowery banks o' Bonnie Doon, how can you bloom so fair? How can you chant, ye little birds, and I so full o' care? Thou'll break my heart, thou bonny bird, that sings upon the bough. Thou minds me o' the happy days, when my false love was true. Thou'll break my heart, thou bonny bird, that sings beside thy mate. For say I sat, and say I sang, and wist my fate. Aft I roved by bonny Doon, to see the woodbine twine, and ilka bird sang o' its love, and say did I o' mine. Wi' lightsome heart, I pu'd a rose frae off its thorny tree, and my false lover stole my rose, but left the thorn wi' me. Thank you. Before my brother met his beautiful wife from Thailand, his constant companion was his dog called Susie. And they would just go walks over the hills and along the river, down by the sea. And she was his pal. I mean, he just loved his dog. He just had the best time. And he'd go home at night and her wee happy face would be there to greet him as he came in the door. And anyway, she got sick and he was quite worried about her. And at that time, he had taken some photographs of her. But he decided because she was sick, he thought he didn't want to hex anything and didn't want to get them developed just in case it might hasten the end or something. I don't know why he thought that. But unfortunately, she got worse and worse. And then he called me from Scotland and he was in tears. He was really, I mean, he was desolate because it was like his own child had died. It really was. Then a few months later, he got these photographs developed. And they were the most beautiful photographs he'd ever taken of that dog. Just incredible. And I have a photograph here. And I was really so touched by this because men in Scotland don't cry, you know. We're all taught not to show our emotions. So George was really desolate. So I wrote this poem for Susie, and I incorporated kind of like a template of the first one I read to you about the mouse, because I felt that was appropriate. And it goes like this. It's Susie, a rare wee lassie, poor wee sleekit, timorous beastie. Oh, what a panic's in my breast. For I cannot imagine what life has in store without your happy wagging tail at the door. Life just won't be the same, no seeing your bonny wee face again. Oh, what's a man today to cope with sic a loss? It's as if a bairn of mine was lost. Nae padding feet alongside mine, nae running after that thrown stain. Oh, Susie, you are such a wee cracker of a gem, giving folks about you blessings that you didn't ken. You made a hit all around the town. People from all over I knew said doon. To hear the news of your sad demise, they've sent condolences saying, please God, look after our wee Susie up where she belongs. Now I suppose from where you are, you're looking down upon us all. So please, tell that big George, your maester, to remember you will and hasten to lift up his spirit so high that he'll remember your presence until he dies. Thank you very much. Just before his marriage, Robert Burns actually did get married to Jean Armour back in 1788. He had a courtly love affair. I think he was always having courtly love affairs, but this unhappily married woman. Gee, this was back in 1750 something, but it could be today, you know. And her name was Nancy, and we have a Nancy here. But this Nancy is much lovelier, I can tell you. Anyway, she was sailing to Jamaica, ironically on a ship that Robert Burns was supposed to sail on 5 years earlier. and she decided to join her now prosperous husband. See, that's always the case, isn't it? They always go to the rich guy. It's actually a disastrous decision, as it turned out. But her parting gift to Burns was a lock of her hair in which he had set in a ring. This is called a fond kiss. And A is like A-E, it just means ah. A fond kiss, and then we sever. A farewell, and then forever. Deep and heart-wrung tears, I'll pledge thee. Warring sighs and groans, I'll wage thee. Who shall say that fortune grieves him, while the star of hope she leaves him? Me? Nae cheerful twinkle lights me. Dark despair around benights me. I'll ne'er blame my partial fancy. Nathan could resist my Nancy. But to see her was to love her. Love but her, and love forever. Had we never loved so kindly? Had we never loved so blindly? Had we never met, never parted, we had never been so broken-hearted. Fare thee weel, thou first and fairest. Fare thee weel, thou best and dearest. Thine be ilka joy and treasure, peace, enjoyment, love and pleasure. Fare thee weel, a fond kiss, and then we sever. A farewell, alas, forever. Deep in heart-wrung tears, I'll pledge thee. Warring sighs and groans, I'll wage thee. Thank you. Back in 1977, my mother was given 6 months to live, and she actually lasted 9 months, so we're very lucky. But rather than put her in hospital and suffer in a hospital atmosphere, my sister had no hesitation in keeping her in her house, because my mother just loved her house. And I do have a photograph of that. It's a beautiful house. My mother loved the garden. In fact, her ashes are buried in the garden by a rose bush. So she just loved that place. And so she spent the last days at my sister's house. And she got weaker and weaker and lost no energy. But she was always thinking of other people. And the last evening, at 2 o'clock in the morning, she'd been getting morphine injections every 4 hours. And the Irish nurse came to give the morphine injections. And of course, my brother-in-law was asleep in bed. And of course, this nurse, they're real Irish women, they're real happy and cheerful. She thought I was my sister's husband, so we had a good laugh about that. She thought we were husband and wife. But she left about 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was only about an hour after that my mother's breath got slower and slower and weaker. But I was finally stopped, and she had passed away, but I was just so thankful that I was able to be with her right to the very end. And I wrote this poem for her. And she died, I'll never forget the day she died, because it's the 7th of September, 1977. And at some point in history, September must have been the 7th month, because in French, S-E-P-T, set is 7. So 7 September 77, I'll never forget that day. This is called To Mama. Wherever you are, wherever you've gone, I know you'll never be alone. You made so many true friends down here who knew you as genuine and sincere. Their kindness and sympathy at this time of need